Next, we're going to work through a more advanced but a very common lookup problem, and that is when we have to look up based on two matching keys. So far we have seen that we looked up the values from the lookup table based on the salesperson name alone. But what if we want to retrieve the result based on the salesperson name as well as the month name? Let's go to the next sheet, which is called Advanced Lookup. And in here, we have a similar problem which I was talking about. I have a lookup table which has 3 columns: salesperson name, month name, and the sales amount. In the target table, in the first row, I want to bring in the sales amount for Emily, but only for the month of February. Let's see what happens if we use the XLOOKUP function like we did before. So I'm going to type in XLOOKUP, put the salesperson name for the lookup value. For the lookup array, we're going to provide the column that contains the salesperson name, and for the resultant array, we will select the sales amount. And as we can see, it brings the January number. This is because the function is not aware that we are looking for the February number. Therefore, it brings the first number that it can find related to Emily in the lookup table. To tell the function that we want to retrieve the data only for the month of February, we will need to apply a technique. And this technique involves setting up a helper column that contains a combo of the two matching keys. So I'm going to set up a new column called combo. And in this column, I want to combine both the salesperson name and the month. This can be achieved via the concatenate function. I'll first give the salesperson name, and as a second argument, I'll give the month name, and then I'll drag the formula down. Likewise, I'm going to set up a combo column in the lookup table. Another option to combine the two values is use the ampersand sign. So I'm going to select the salesperson, then put the ampersand sign and select the month. Next, we can apply the XLOOKUP function on this combo column. So I'm going to put in XLOOKUP. For the lookup value, I'll select the combo column that we have set up in the target table. For the lookup array, I'll select the combo column from the lookup table, and we're going to select the sales amount as the resultant array. And now we have the values for the month of February. We can freeze the ranges and drag the formula down. When using lookup functions, there's always a chance of formulas running into errors. For example, if they don't find the lookup value in the lookup tables. To make your Excel files look clean and professional, it's always recommended to use error handling techniques. Let's go to the next sheet called error handling. I have a similar data set over here. Let's apply a VLOOKUP formula to bring the sales amount from the lookup table. For the lookup value, I'm going to give the salesperson name. For the array, I'm going to give the table array. Give the second column an exact match. As we can see, the function is able to retrieve the sales value for Michael, but for others, it's throwing an error. This is because the other employees are not there in the lookup table. Now, of course, it makes your Excel look buggy and messy. To clean this up, we can use a function called ifError. I'm just going to copy this formula as we will need it later. Now I'm going to delete it and put in ifError. The ifError function takes in 2 arguments. The first argument is the formula that we want the function to evaluate. So I'm going to put in the VLOOKUP formula, which I had copied just now. If the formula returns a valid result, the function, the ifError function, will bring in that result. The second argument is value ifError. So if the formula that we provided in the first argument results in an error, the ifError function will return the value which we provide in the second argument. So here I will say not found. Now I can drag the formula down and it works. We can also put something else in the value ifError argument. That is the second argument. We can put 0, or if we want, we can put in blank. Now, a short while back, I just mentioned that error handling is much easier with XLOOKUP. So let's see how it's done. I will first apply the XLOOKUP function to this problem. The lookup value will be the salesperson name. Lookup array will be the first column, and sales amount will be the return array. So we see the same error again that we saw in case of the VLOOKUP. Now, instead of wrapping the XLOOKUP function inside of the ifError function, like we had to do in case of VLOOKUP, here I can simply use the built-in argument of the XLOOKUP function. Let's deep dive into the XLOOKUP function, and I'm going to put in a comma here. And as you can see, the fourth argument of the XLOOKUP function is called if not found. This refers to what do we want the function to do if it doesn't find the lookup value in the lookup table. So here I would just put in not found and close the formula. And there we go. So basically, when it comes to error handling, XLOOKUP makes the life so much easier. In this section, we're going to learn about the text functions in Excel. The text functions are extremely useful when working with raw data. They allow us to clean, reshape, and prepare our information so it can be used for accurate analysis. In the FP&A world, we often deal with large, messy datasets, and the quality of an analysis depends heavily on the quality of the data. Mastering the text functions give us the ability to quickly transform our data into a usable format. We are going to cover several important text functions. As always, you can find the exercise files in the resources section. Let's begin with the LEN function. The LEN function counts the number of characters in a text string. To see this in action, here's an example. We have a table with the employee codes, and in our organization, we know that the employee codes are always 6 digits long. Now, to make sure that there are no errors due to incorrect typing or posting, we can use the LEN function to count the number of characters in each code. So let's write in the LEN function and give reference to the cell that contains the employee code. Close the function, copy, and paste it all the way down. Once we have these counts, we can take it a step further and wrap the results of the LEN function inside an if statement, and that way it will help us flag which employee codes are correct and which ones are invalid. So I'm going to type in the if statement, and for the logical test of the if statement, I'm going to evaluate whether the length of the employee code is equal to 6 or not. If it is equal to 6, we want to return valid. Otherwise, we want to return invalid. Next, we can copy and paste it all the way down. Let's move on to the next exercise and learn how to use the left function. Left, right, and mid are text extraction functions. They allow us to pull out a specific number of characters from a text string. The best way to understand them is through an example. So on this sheet, we have sales data by employee codes. Each employee code begins with a 3-letter country code followed by some random digits. Our objective is to find sales amount for employees based out of US and Canada. But to get this, we first need the sales amount by country code. Since the country code is always the first 3 characters of the employee code, we can use the left function to retrieve it. The left function takes in 2 arguments. The first argument is the text string from which we want to retrieve some characters. The second argument is the number of characters that we want to be extracted. So for the first argument, I'm going to give reference to the cell that contains the employee codes. And for the second argument, I'm going to put in 3 because we want to retrieve the first 3 characters. Close the bracket, copy, and paste the formula. Now that we have the sales amounts by country code, we can use the SUMIF formula to get the sales only for the employees that are based out of US or Canada. So let's type in SUMIF. For the range, we will provide the column containing the country codes. The criteria is the country code for which we want to get the sales, and the sum range is the sales amount. Let's freeze the cells. And there we go. In the next exercise, we're going to explore the trim function. When working with data exported from companies' ERP systems, you'll often notice unnecessary spaces in the text. For example, let's have a look at this dataset where I have employee names and their departments. For Sarah Lee, we have multiple spaces between her first and last name. Similarly, for Maria Gomez, we have a space towards the end of the name, and we have multiple spaces before her first name. If these spaces are not removed, they can affect the quality of your data and even cause errors in functions like lookup and sumif. Therefore, before you process your data further, it's always a good idea to clean it, and the trim function can help you in that. It removes all the unnecessary spaces. So for example, if there are spaces before or after the name, or if there are multiple spaces between the words, trim is going to clean them up. So let's go ahead and type in the trim function and give reference to the text string that we want to clean. Close the bracket and paste it. I'm also going to go ahead and clean up the department names as well. If you want to find out how many unneeded spaces the trim function has removed, we can calculate the length of the names before the trim and after the trim. So we can go and type in the length function, give reference to the name before the trim, and likewise len function and the name after the trim. As you can see that the trim function has removed a lot of spaces, and sometimes they might also not be visible with just a naked eye.